Parents of Reddit, what's been the most WTF moment that you've witnessed with how someone interacts with your child? This happened to me when I was about 3 years old. My mom told me about this like a year ago. Some guy who was known as Dr. House in our village, because of his insane drug use and his appearance, walked up to me in a park and started talking to me in baby language. Goo goo gaga blah blah blah, etc. My mom thought he was just being funny, but he became really angry when he heard I could actually talk. He lifted me in the air and stumbled away with me in his hands, yelling, "Little liar." A guy who was also in the park then tackled our beloved doctor and brought me back to my mom. I said I was about 3 years old, could be 4 or 5, I don't remember anything about it. My mom told me this story. I'm surprised he didn't diagnose you with lupus. When my oldest was a few months, my cousins came to visit. They asked whether I started giving my daughter ice baths yet. Now, a bit of background. We are all Russian-Ukrainian immigrants, and popular in the Soviet times was the theory of zakhalenia, adjusting the body to cold weather for supposed health reasons. I was subjected to it. I did not enjoy it, because I am a mammal who doesn't enjoy torture. Nor do I enjoy torturing any small children, much less my own. Anyway, no, I tell my cousin, as she launches into a long explanation of how they did ice baths for their son when he was an infant, and how he hated it, and how it was good for him even though he cried. I am sure the expression I wore on my face can best be described as WTF. My cousin's explanation peters out as she points at her husband and yells, "He made me do it." One of my ex-husband's aunts was obsessed with my daughter. She was constantly trying to separate my daughter and I so she could be alone with her. Like she'd offer to change or feed her, then take her to separate room away from me. I can honestly make a list of some of the weird things she's done. Probably one of the most WTF thing was when my daughter was 2. She was toddling around being her normal cute self. Aunt reaches out and grabs my daughter bottom and says, "Such a tight cute little butt." I start yelling at her. Everyone thinks I'm blowing it out of proportion. That was probably one of the most WTF things I've seen. My daughter is my biological daughter. We are American. She was born in Atlanta, GA. She's now an adult. However, she and I have both been asked her entire life if she is adopted. Complete strangers, when they see her in person or in a photograph, will always ask where she is from. They never believe us, but oh well, lol. Once when she was around 13, we were in the mall and a female employee approached us in a store and started making small talk. She then starts asking about my daughter's ethnicity and commenting on how exotic she looks, how beautiful she was, etc. She starts asking if my daughter was a dancer. Not sure why. My daughter says yes. Then the woman starts asking where she danced, if she has recitals, can she come watch sometime. She says she wished she had pictures to send back home to show her relatives. BC, she's just so beautiful. I mean, she's just staring at my daughter like she's in a trance. Then she starts touching her face and rests her hand on her shoulder. I grabbed my daughter by the hand and left. Touching my kid crosses the line. WTF. Your daughter is beautiful. She must be adopted. Seems like such a backhanded compliment. My aunt took me and my cousin to an antique shop when I was 9 and my cousin was 7. The shop owner kept saying we were pretty as peaches and ran his thumb over my cousin's mouth. I was so anxious for her but was too scared to say anything. On the way home, my aunt called us W. I went from wanting to punch that man to wanting to kill your aunt. My mum called me a Dutch W once because I got changed with the curtains open. I don't understand why adults think it's okay to stereotype children on the basis of gender like that. When an acquaintance of my husband, after being invited out for dinner with our family, started detailing physical shaming abuse in front of our 3 children, and then tried to continue the conversation directly with our 13-year-old daughter after we segued to a more appropriate topic. Wouldn't stop trying to talk about it until I squared up with him and told him that he was way out of line trying to force this conversation with my kids as appropriate. We are super open with them and no topic is really off limits within reason for their age. But topics like that are definitely for the parents, and he wasn't talking about good tips to avoid it. He was wanting to talk about what pedophiles do to children. Up until then he had been an odd duck, but nothing too weird. This set our alarms off, and after talking over other behaviors and using the benefit of hindsight, we agreed this was an attempt to begin grooming our girls. He had a strange attachment to our than 3-year-old in particular, who he'd met twice for maybe 20 minutes each. Cut off contact immediately. Found out later that other mutual acquaintances felt the same, that he was a diddler just waiting for an opportunity and it was just a matter of time. We also learned he would obsess over our kids in conversations with others. I believe to my core that if we hadn't picked up on what he was doing, one or all of them could have been victims. Thank goodness he played his hand so overtly and so quickly. I would think about notifying the police. If he's that overt with you, he had probably hurt someone. When my brother was a toddler, before he learned to swim, a stranger pushed him off the dock into 5 feet of water. My dad dang near killed the guy, because I didn't expect this to take off. The guy claimed he didn't see brother, and even if he did, he thought he could swim, and my dad didn't kill him because it was a public beach with a lot of witnesses. Nothing really happened because the guy didn't live in town and no one wanted to start a major investigation. When me and my little brother were younger and bathing at a beach, some older kid none of us knew just pushed and held my brother's head underwater while that kid's mother was watching. Mum got my brother the heck away from there. My mill gave my 3-month-old daughter, who had only ever had breast milk, both eggnog and sips of red wine. 3 months old. ETA. Baby eventually puked on Mill's face, which made me very happy. This was just the tip of the mother-in-law has no boundaries iceberg. I know it means nothing in the grand scheme of the universe, but taking away the opportunity for me and my husband to decide what would be her first non-breast milk food, get ready, and share that experience was extremely hurtful to me. It was a harbinger of things to come. I'm happy to say 15 years later, kid, husband and I are happy. I no longer speak to or interact with husband's family, though he does, and I highly recommend this solution. If I were you, the mill would never spend time alone with your daughter ever again. My son, 6, has gorgeous curly, red hair. It's beautiful and we always get comments on it when we are out. There have been multiple times though when we are out that someone will reach out and run their hands through his hair without saying a dang word, like don't touch the freaking child. The other one that made me literally scream was a woman at a mall. He'd just gotten out of the hospital for surgery on his legs and we were picking up pain meds on our way home. He was casted toe to knee and had pins in both feet. Had him in his little wheelchair and I'm looking at the medication and hear him whimpering, and this woman came up and was playing with his toes. Loudly asked what she thought she was doing and she starts stammering she was just wondering why he was casted. I told her that then you ask the adult you don't touch. Seriously, don't touch the stranger's child. This was many years ago when my children were very young, about 2 and 4, was at Grand Canyon West getting ready to leave. While we were waiting for the bus back, a group of Asian tourists rolls off the bus they just arrived on. The group runs over and rips my youngest out of my arms and starts passing him around, taking photos with him and pinching his cheeks, which were admittedly pretty darn chubby. My son, of course, is trying to figure out WTF is happening and starts to cry. They gave him back and went on their way, but the whole thing was just weird. Who takes vacation pictures with a random baby? There's too many random baby grabbing stories in this thread and far too few falcon punches in response. I'm terrified this is going to happen to me one day and I'll just freeze. It's enough to make me never want to go out anywhere. I was a parent at 18 and was pretty tatted up and pierced at the same time. I was in Walmart one day and an employee approaches me with security and says they want me and the child to come with them to answer some questions. I hadn't done anything wrong, so I told them to kick rocks. A few minutes later, 2 cops and the same employee come up to me. Apparently the manager profiled me and thought I had kidnapped my own child. Luckily my dad is a cop in the county we were in and I told the officers to radio him because he was on duty. Within 45 seconds they had confirmation that she was in fact mine, and I was informing the manager that profiling people might end up in more than embarrassment one day. I was at a baseball game with my firstborn when he was about 6 months old. I had him in a wrap and I was walking through the stadium by the vendors to find a mother's room where I could nurse him quietly. As we were walking, a random lady came running up to us out of the blue and just kissed him on the face. Honestly, I was so stunned that a complete stranger would find that appropriate that I don't even remember what she said. I was freaked out but just walked away. In retrospect, and several children later, my reaction was far too tame. If that happened now, I would raise holy heck and call her out, but as a first time mom who was still pretty intimidated by motherhood, I didn't know what to do. Still regret that today. Once in a restaurant I left my table to use the restroom. I passed a table with a little girl in a high chair and patted her head. Her parents didn't notice but I felt so weird after. I did it instinctively. I babysat my little cousins around that time a lot. It felt like muscle memory. So inappropriate though. I think about it and cringe years later. I went to a pool with my children when they were younger. We had a set of twins that were around 2 years old at the time and this was local hotel pool off the interstate. Had a woman ask if both the kids were mine and if they were twins. I told her they were and they were a lot of work. She then proceeded to ask me if I wanted to sell them. I didn't really know what to say as it took me off guard. I thought she was kidding. She wasn't and made it very apparent that she wasn't. I told her no and then went and stayed close to them the rest of the time we were there, which wasn't long to be sure. Not a parent yet but this happened to me as a kid. I was with my dad on work. He is a bus driver at the time. No jokes now please. But I was sitting in the seats opposite side of the driver's seat so I could get a view as we drove his routes. At one point an old lady boarded the bus and demanded that I move as that was her regular seat. Of course I didn't move as my dad had told me to sit there while we were driving and he could keep an eye on me. The woman got more and more agitated and ended up trying to remove me by pulling my hair. Luckily before it went totally nuts country one of the other passengers stood up for me as my dad was busy driving. To this day I still have a hard time figuring out what was wrong with the old biddy. Oh and I was around 7 at the time. Some people are chair hoarders. That woman was just insane. An employee at a hardware store once thought my 3-year-old daughter was carrying around a stick BC I was making her, in case she was bad, so I could hit her with it. I think she misheard something I said when answering her initial question but I had just said yeah. She found it outside earlier and just wanted to carry it everywhere with her today, and from that, she heard something like I'm making her carry this stick as a reminder to be good, or else I'll use the stick to hurt her. The worst part was, she said yeah, I remember when mine were that age. You have to keep them in line and never let them forget who's in charge. It was weird until that point, at which it was purely disturbing. I couldn't pay and get out of there fast enough. My younger son is autistic, mostly nonverbal, and had semi-regular physical stims, flapping hands, bouncing on the balls of his feet, etc. when he was younger. Besides all the usual nasty looks, total disregard, and mumbled insults probably every parent of a mentally or developmentally disabled child gets, we've experienced some simply awful people. Ones that stick out include a woman who tried to pass us in the supermarket line. Cut in line. I wasn't blocking the aisle or anything, by just squashing my son between our carts. Like his face was literally smooshed up through the wire mesh of the cart. I snapped at her and pushed her cart away, and she responded with, "It's not hurting him. He's just a retard anyway." I had one woman watching him in another store once. She sort of followed us around, and I kept my eye on her. Then, when my son made a random noise, she ran up, grabbed his head, got down in his face, and said, "No, no, you psycho retard. Nice people are shopping," even if he screamed, which he sometimes did. Ugh, no call for that. I knocked her into a rack of clothes and yelled at her and store security came running. ETA, I didn't want to go to jail. I had my 2 little boys with me. They're a year apart, and both of them started crying when both of these things happened. I guess I'm more of a flight and fight type person. I just wanted to scoop them up and get them out of there. Oh ho ho ho, this one has made me the most angry out of all of the ones I've read so far. I was walking with my son back from the park and this weird butt looking old dude came off his porch and walked up to me and my son and asked him directly, "Would you like to come in and see my kittens and pray with me?" and kinda reached out towards his shoulder. I answered for him, "No, we do not want to, thanks," and walked away. I'm not against my son petting someone else's kitties, or against religion. But if my son decides he wants to be religious, it's going to be from his own doing and not gonna be because of some creepy butt diddler looking dude. Probably tame compared to other people's stories, but that creeped me right the frick out, and I still avoid that house whether my son is with me or not. Not me, but was at a work get together at a park the other day, and parents were able to bring their kids with to have fun at the park. This one mom had her small child there and people were going around and holding the child. Well, this one creepy looking guy who I'm not even sure worked at our company was there and asked to hold the baby. Mom says that it feels like child's diaper is wet and she's going to change it. Creepy dude then says, oh no worries, if you want I'll change it for you. It wasn't even my child, but I was immediately worried about the kid being around that guy and side-eyed him the whole time to make sure he wasn't doing anything. Took my kids to my grandma's house so they could go swimming. My grandma lives with my mom. My mom's boyfriend of the month was over at the house. I had no idea she had someone over. If I'd known we wouldn't have gone over. I'd never met this guy before, ever. We haven't seen him since either. Anyway, my kids jump in the pool and this guy starts snapping pics of them with his phone. WTF? Why would some stranger want pics of my kids? I shut it down. The guy and my mom ended up leaving to go shopping. Good riddance. We were able to relax and enjoy the pool. A month ago, I accompanied my friend's 3-year-old on a flight for their visitation. The father was seeing us off, along with his mom, the child's grandmother. I wanted to show them how well behaved she was going through the line to the Tsar check, so I tried to high-five her in front of them. What they witnessed instead was me missing her little hand and shoving my hand into this poor toddler's face like Goku conjuring a Kamehameha orb, saturating all the energy from what was supposed to be a good-natured expression of great job into a hostile, full-strength uppercut with my palm. Honestly, I'm hoping it's the most WTF moment they've witnessed with someone and their kid. Kid still thinks I'm cool. My god, I've not laughed that hard in a while. I have a few, though I only witnessed one firsthand. 1. Shortly after she was born, I took my daughter to my mom's house. I ran into my mom's neighbor while carrying her to the front door. He stopped to say hi, then told my daughter, I'm sorry you were born. Sweetie, life is going to crap all over you, you'll learn that soon enough. 2. My husband was at the grocery store one day and had our daughter, then about a year old, in the cart. A woman scooted over on an electric scooter and told him she was cute. He said thanks, and she followed up with, but she's so skinny she should be in a concentration camp. He immediately texted me what she said, and we both pondered over the shit in that sentence. 3. Another one from my mother-in-law. My daughter, Mill, and husband went out of town together and were staying at a nice hotel. While taking the elevator to their suite, another passenger told them that she's afraid of little people. She then apparently screamed at my daughter, you're going to kill me, over and over for the rest of the ride. My daughter was 3. That third one sounds like someone was having a really bad drug trip. Auntie takes care of my kids one night each weekend so I can take my wife on a date, or did, when life allowed. One time we ended up having a quick dinner, got home while they were all awake. We snuck in, hoping to hide out in the basement and get some bonus alone time. Heard her tell them it was bedtime in 10 minutes, then 5 minutes, then it was bedtime, and they proceeded to put themselves to bed. It was WTF cause it never works for us. Not that I mind reading to them or whatever else, but it's never that easy. But it worked for her. Then like a half hour later I thought I heard screaming. Wife mutes the TV and I make it out immediately. It's not screaming, it's moaning. The girl is watching pee in my living room, with my kids upstairs. It was totally a WTF, but like my wife said, I don't know how I feel. It's not like you don't watch pee on your computer after the kids go to bed. Do you think she's jilling off in your lazy boy? So we just banged in the basement. Seemed like the thing to do. It was WTF cause it never works for us. Not that I mind reading to them or whatever else, but it's never that easy. But it worked for her. Kids save their best work for their parents. They know for a fact that mom and dad will always love them, so they push boundaries. Congrats on a strong attachment, and also on a funny post. D. My sons are all very good looking. My first awakening moment came with my oldest. By the time he was in high school, I got used to girls his age and slightly older making comments, but I was left speechless and shocked when I overheard the mothers of my daughter's friends, people my age and older, talking about him in the same physical way. It was sickening, and then when they noticed I heard them, they laughed and tried to pass it off as a joke or light-hearted banner. Still upsets me. The other issue I had to deal with is the amount of pictures other girls would take of my sons and spread them online. Learned through the grapevine some of the hashtags used. At one baseball game, there were some high school girls making rude comments about one of my sons and taking pictures of his butt every time he bent down as a catcher. I didn't say anything to them as his girlfriend went after them, and after she was done, she had managed to embarrass them in front of the entire crowd enough that they quickly left. I moved a bowl of peanut M&Ms out of reach for my 16-month-old, at the time, who is highly allergic to peanuts. It was from a low table on one side of a walkway to a higher counter, literally 2 feet away. My sister-in-law then says to me, "You can't keep her in a bubble forever." No crap, butthole. But she's a baby and doesn't understand that those beautiful little pieces of candy will kill her, and she can't talk to tell me if she eats one and has a reaction. With about a million kids running around and chaos all over, I'm not taking any chances. My sister-in-law also has food allergies, so you'd think she'd understand, but it turns out she's just a bee. This happened to my sister. Ever since she was a toddler, she was fascinated by cooking and was gradually becoming a fairly accomplished baker. To this day, she is one of the best cooks I know. As a treat for her Girl Scout troop, she made a complex multi-level cake that was supposed to represent a local landmark that her troop talked about often. Our mother helped a little, but she did most of the work. She was super proud of the result and brought it into school to show her class. For a 9-year-old, it was truly impressive. All of her classmates hooted and awed over it, and the cake was then taken into the teacher's lounge for safekeeping. My sister and my mother would pick it up when school ended, as our mother was going to drive her directly to her Girl Scout meeting. I don't know for sure if this influenced what happened next, but my sister's teacher never liked my sister for some reason. I was never sure why. Anyhow, when my sister and mother brought the cake into the class, they were both quite clear that the cake was for her Girl Scout troop that night, and my sister just wanted to show off. I'm not quite sure how it happened, but out of those words the teacher heard this cake was a gift to me. During my lunch I should eat some of it and cut pieces off here and there and pass them out to my fellow teachers. After lunch the teacher made a point of complimenting my sister in front of the whole class that the cake was delicious and she should be proud. My sister burst into tears and ran from the room. It took her a while to calm down. As she was trying to regain her composure, the teacher called my mom to complain that my sister needed to learn how to take a compliment better. My mother left work and drove to the school. She met with the teacher and the principal privately. Then she gathered up what was left of the cake. It had been butchered into an unrecognizable mess, and took my sister home. My sister spent most of the day and night crying. I don't know what was said in the meeting, but the next day the teacher apologized in front of the class, my sister, the principal, and my mother. For the rest of the year she tried, and largely failed, to be nicer. She didn't return to the school the next year, and I'm confident my mother had something to do with that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.